Good evening, dear listeners, and welcome to today's TSF1 Greece podcast regarding the Australian Grand Prix. Together, along with me today is Panos. Good evening, Panos. How are you doing?
Good evening, Alex. I'm fine. How are you today?
I'm doing well. So, today, because Panos is a bit overwhelmed, it was a tough weekend for him. I will help him a bit, so we will change up a bit the format. I will take over free practice 1 and 2, and he will continue with free practice 3 and quali. So, on free practice 1, we saw Max Verstappen at the top, doing a 1:18.790, followed by Lewis Hamilton half a second slower than him, with third place being taken by Sergio Perez, again another half second slower, at 1:19.293 compared to Lewis Hamilton. So, further down the line, we had Fernando Alonso with 1:19.3, along with Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz at 1:19.3 and 1:19.5, followed by Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly, George Russell and Lance Stroll making the first 10 drivers, followed after that by Alexander Albon, Oscar Piastri, Nico Hülkenberg, Nick De Vries, Logan Sargent, Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu and Kevin Magnussen. On free practice 2, position number 1, Fernando Alonso with a 1:18.887, followed by Charles Leclerc with his Ferrari at 1:19.332, followed at the third place by Max Verstappen at 1:19.5. The rest of the grid till the 10th place was taken over in the following order by George Russell, Carlos Sainz, Esteban Ocon, Sergio Perez, Lando Norris, Nico Hülkenberg and Pierre Gasly. After, the positions 11 to 19 were Yuki Tsunoda, Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton, Oscar Piastri, Zhou Guanyu, Lance Stroll, Nick De Vries, Alexander Albon and again at the 20th place, Kevin Magnussen. Pano?
So, free practice 3, Saturday morning, the practice session before qualifying. At the top we had Max Verstappen with 1:17.565. Second place we had Fernando Alonso, almost 2 tenths behind. Third, Esteban Ocon. Alpine seemed to find a very good pace this weekend. Third place, almost 4 tenths behind Verstappen. Fourth, Russell. Fifth, Gasly with the second Alpine. Sixth, Sergio Perez, who seemed to have many issues this weekend with his car and the setup of the car. He was complaining about oversteering and the stability of the car. He couldn't trust the car, as we say in motorsports, so he couldn't push 10 out of 10 to.
And he wasn't actually the only one that wasn't able to get 100% from his car. So
out of the car, exactly. So after Perez in 6th, we have in 7th Carlos Sainz with the first Ferrari, 8th Lewis Hamilton, 9th Stroll, 10th Zhou Guanyu, 11th Hülkenberg, 12th Albon, Leclerc 13th, Piastri 14th. His first debut as an F1 driver, as an Australian F1 driver. 15th Bottas, Tsunoda, Sargent, Magnussen, Nick De Vries and 20th Lando Norris. So we go with quali, where we have out of Q2 in 15th Nick De Vries, 16th Oscar Piastri, 17th Zhou Guanyu, 18th Sargent, 19th Bottas and Sergio Perez in 20th, who failed to set a time in Q1 due to an exit he had during the session, so he will start from the pit lane. We move on with Q2. Out of Q3 in 11th we have Ocon, 12th Yuki Tsunoda, 13th Lando Norris, 14th Kevin Magnussen, and 15th Nick De Vries. So we go to Q3, where we have in pole position Max Verstappen with 1:16.732. Second, George Russell. Third, Lewis Hamilton. Fourth, Fernando Alonso, Mercedes in front of Aston Martin. Fifth, Carlos Sainz. Sixth, Lance Stroll with the second Aston. Seventh, Leclerc. Eighth, Albon with the Williams. Ninth, Pierre Gasly. And 10th, Nico Hülkenberg with the Haas Ferrari team.
Great. That would take us now to the race, but we will have an extra guest for the race. So just give us a second to bring Dimitris along. And just like that, we have Dimitris along with us. Hello, Dimitris.
Hello.
You're doing fine. Hamilton finished second, so I'm not going to say
yeah.
Well, we just had the Greek podcast. You already pissed us a bit, so let's get going with the race. So, lap 1, we had safety car. Wow. No surprise, guess who did not finish this race? Charles Leclerc. Again. I think, just like Panos commented on our Greek version, we can understand Stroll. He's like, oh, here's Alonso, I'm gonna crash into him. I better not crash into him. Let's go left. And then he's like, oh, there's Charles. Oh well, let's take this one out this time. And off he went. So
I think luck is not with us this year, neither with Stroll.
It's gone since 2012 if you're a Tifosi. Yeah. It's not our decade, and we're going over the decade this season, so yeah.
Exactly.
It's actually kind of sad. Anyway, 2 laps after that, we have the safety car again in. Russell did a very strong restart, pushing away by nearly a second. In the meantime, a few drivers, including Ocon, Bottas and Perez, have pitted for hard tires to potentially look to go for the distance rather than for the fastest time at this point on the race. A few laps after that, Verstappen is already setting the fastest lap of the race, trying to take back the lead, but the Mercedes duo of Russell and Hamilton is actually doing really well. Then, lap 7, Alexander Albon is out of the race. The Williams driver lost control of that car at turn 7, which is actually a bummer for him because he was at a very promising 7th place, so yeah, it's a real shame for him. After that, we have a red flag because as a result of the mess of the gravel and debris that Albon's crash brought on track, so the cars returned to the pit lane. We had a 15-minute break, then we were back underway with Hamilton holding the lead and Russell having worked up his way into P5 because Russell had, let's say, the bad luck of pitting under safety car, and after that came the red flag, so he had to start from the position he had during the time the safety car was out. 3 laps after that, we are now at lap 12, Verstappen takes the lead, totally utilizing the power of the Red Bull in the DRS zone. Same thing for Sergio Perez further back, who's also fighting his way up the grid because he had, as we remember, a pit. He started from the pit lane, but Russell's luck went from bad to worst because at lap 18 he is forced to retire as fire and smoke emerged from his car, and we actually saw a few flames, so that was a failed power unit, as we later found out. So at lap 18 we have a virtual safety car, and luckily he was fine, it was just the car, but I mean it's bad luck because it looked like he would have a good race. So a few laps down the line, both Red Bull drivers are really using the full potential of the DRS pace. Perez continues to work his way up into the positions that give points, so he's already in 10th place at lap 23. A few laps down the line, we see both Alpine drivers also having a very positive race today. Gasly has generally held his position in the 5th place, while Ocon is fighting further back to sit in the points. A few laps down the race, as we continue, in typical fashion, Verstappen has quietly established a dominant advantage, leading over Hamilton now by 8 seconds by lap 32. But I think that's not so important, so let's see what the other drivers were doing. The veteran, Nico Hülkenberg, is also having a really impressive race so far because he's currently in P7. We are already at lap 35. A few laps down the line, Logan Sargent is the first driver to return into the pits for new tires. That's at lap 37. So with 20 laps remaining, are we going to see any drivers stop for a fresh set? Well, as it happened, it was a relatively calm race between the laps 37 and 54. Perez continued to climb in the leaderboard. At lap 52, Lando gets his man with a crafty overtake against Hülkenberg, so the McLaren driver moves up to P8 now. It was a really good race for McLaren actually, after the disappointing race they had last time in Saudi Arabia. And then Kevin Magnussen, I think it was just bad judgment. He lost a bit. He lost the rear of his car, so he slipped a bit. At lap 54, crashed into the wall, and actually a piece of the wheel along with his tire went flying into the air, and he also had significant damage, but he safely moved his car away next to an emergency exit. But as it was awaited, we did have another safety car. Red flag again after the safety car, so the cars come again into the pits. We have a 15-minute break, and then we continue at lap 57. So the cars again line up at the starting grid. We set off and we have absolute carnage. A lot of cars go off in the first corner. I mean, it's a total mayhem. But the worst thing for the drivers was Sainz, where he didn't brake as early as he should, pushed off Alonso, which gave him a 5-second penalty, which we will see how it affected him after that. By the end of the race, it basically dropped him for his P4 position completely down to P12. He was basically the last driver from the ones that did finish. But the worst was for the two Alpines. I mean, the guys had an amazing race today, but unfortunately, due to the lack of visibility and maybe a bit of bad judgment, one crashed into the other, with both cars going into the wall and being completely destroyed. So again, we had another red flag, which lasted around 30 minutes. At this point, it was just before the cars lined up again, where Sainz has been handed the 5-second penalty with his collision for Alonso. According to the telemetry, it was proven that he didn't brake enough, supposedly. So the race finished behind the safety car, so they did a full lap, and again, that was it. So regarding the positioning that the drivers had for the final lap, it was as it happened at lap 57 as they started. Some drivers found that not right, others, people on Twitter said why that? Well, according to the FIA rulebook, it is completely normal. I mean, it's the procedure, it's the rule. If the red flag comes out before a full lap after the restart is completed, the cars will take the same starting positions or the same grid positions, let's say, as they had before the red flag came out. So the restart lineup was Verstappen, Hamilton, Alonso, Sainz, Stroll, Perez, Norris, Hülkenberg, Piastri, Guan Yu, Tsunoda and Bottas. Now, driver of the day was Checo. Guys, I think Checo really deserved it. I mean, he fought like hell for his position. I mean, he did everything.
And an amazing comeback.
as possible. And regarding the whole restarting procedure and the mess and the crashes, I think he did well. He did well. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that McLaren's driver from the Australian, Oscar Piastri, the only Australian driver currently active in Formula 1, because Ricciardo is a reserve driver, as we know, for Red Bull, finished 8th on his home debut after a wild race and scored his first points. I think Carlos Sainz was hit with a late penalty which really destroyed him. So Sainz said on the radio, no, it's unacceptable, they need to wait until the race is finished and then discuss it with me. I think it's a bummer, because not because we are just Ferrari fans, but I think, was it really that bad? I mean, a 5-second penalty? I don't know. I mean, it's maybe a bit too much. I don't know. I mean, we have seen on Twitter that there were many pictures showing that Verstappen during a restart was quite off his position actually, and further up front than he should, but nobody seemed to see that, so that's some food for thought. I think Dimitris is happy that Hamilton took the second place, despite the fact that he just acknowledges himself as a Mercedes fan and not a Hamilton fan. I want to comment like from my heart, so this one, but YouTube won't allow me.
At least we got the second place. We are on the podium.
Yeah, I mean, the last time this guy was on a podium was Saudi Arabia, 2021.
Oh, what?
Yes, after that it was the race that he was crying, why is he doing that? And it's the, no Mikey, no. Do you remember that race? Does that ring any bells?
No.
No. Typical Mercedes fanboy. So the finishing grid is from first position to the 12th, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso in the first 3 places, followed by Lance Stroll, Sergio Perez, Lando Norris, Nico Hülkenberg, Oscar Piastri, Zhou Guanyu, Yuki Tsunoda, Valtteri Bottas and Carlos Sainz, who went from 4th to 12th due to his 5-second penalty. And the drivers that did not finish include Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon, the 2 Alpines, Nick De Vries, Logan Sargent, Kevin Magnussen, George Russell, Alexander Albon and Charles Leclerc. So, the driver standing as per today are Max Verstappen with 69 points, Sergio Perez with 54, Fernando Alonso with 45, Lewis Hamilton went to 4th place with 38, Carlos Sainz and Lance Stroll share the same position with 20 points, George Russell is following them with 18, Lando Norris has got 8 points, Nico Hülkenberg and Charles Leclerc have 6 points, Valtteri Bottas, Esteban Ocon, Oscar Piastri and Pierre Gasly have 4, Zhou Guanyu has 2 and Tsunoda, Magnussen and Albon have 1, while the 2 drivers that haven't scored any points yet are Logan Sargent and Nick De Vries. In the Constructor Championship, Red Bull leads with 123 points, followed by Aston Martin with 65, and in the 3rd position we have Mercedes, again with 56, followed by Ferrari with 26, followed by McLaren with 12, then we have got Alpine with 8, Haas with 7, and Alfa Romeo with 6, while Alfa Tauri and Williams only have 1 point. Gentlemen, do you want to add something?
I think we covered everything.
No comments.
Yeah. Alex.
So, I mean, it was an interesting race, but it was also a bit of chaos, especially for us commenting. I mean, it was a lot of back and forth. Let's hope for a better race, a more clear race with actual racing and not like having crashes every other corner at Baku. So, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix for 2023 will take place by the end of April, between the 28th and the 30th of April. It's actually quite a big a gap because it's as per today,
3
the
weeks.
2nd of April, it's actually 25 days. But Baku will also bring the first sprint race of the season. I don't know how you feel about that. Let's hope that it's a bit more interesting this year, let's say. I mean, we want a bit of Melbourne, but maybe not so many red flags. I mean, DNFs don't offer anything. I mean, we need people to actually race. So hopefully we have battles, but racing, and not just 12 cars at the end, but the whole grid. From us at TSF1 Greece, thank you very much for being amongst us, and we look forward to seeing you in our next podcast for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Have a great day.